Yeah, hello. Welcome back, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
It's the Modern Relics Podcast. Special treat. It's debate time.
Woo! I'm looking forward to this, man.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this all week.
Yeah, so I kind of had a janky, let's put this together. I spent a lot of time last night building an actual scenescape for this, but I realized pretty quick I can't stream YouTube TV, but I can stream YouTube back to YouTube for reasons that remain unclear. Anyway, we're going to have a black background. You're going to see 3 images of us if you're tuning in on YouTube live tonight, and that will be our rebroadcasted coverage of the ABC coverage of the presidential debate. So first things on the menu, and I've got it on mute in the background. Let's check the audio when the stream comes back up, just so we can test it, which is about 15 seconds away. But we all kind of were talking about how cool it would be to have a debate with Kamala Harris and JD Vance. And then our commander-in-chief quit, said, I'm not running back. And now Kamala's going to have to dance with Trump. And I didn't think this would happen.
No.
So real quick, before I get your take, can you hear the stream now?
Tensions in the Middle East.
Yes, I can.
All right, so I'm going to mute that because we got about 15 plus 17 minutes. Yeah.
Yep,
So talk to me about what are some expectations that you have going into tonight? Like what are you?
Well, my wife put out a bunch of bingo cards for the people on her Telegram channel, so it's going to be fun to see. And it's the obvious stuff, but man, what I'm hoping is he handles himself the way he did with Biden, where he just keeps himself calm and collected and just doesn't go Trumpian on this situation. I think that's his best bet. I think that's how he's in best form. Is when he does that. I don't think that she's prepared, regardless of how much she's prepared. I don't think she's going to be able to handle this well, and I think it's going to be a bit of a bloodbath, which will then be spun by the guys, on the media outlets to make it seem like she did way better than she actually did. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my prediction. There's no way that she's going to be able to stand, because she's going to have to walk the finest razor's edge to blame what's going on in the country on an administration that she's still currently part of, but yet say that she's going to somehow get us out of it. And it's going to be very easy to handle from the other side of that podium.
Yeah.
So I just don't see anything that's going to come out of this that's going to be a gut punch from her. Mm-hmm. I think she's going to get rattled pretty quick. I think we're going to start seeing some of the nervous cackling that she's known for. I think we're going to see a lot of facial expressions from Trump with his cocked head and raised eyebrows. And I think that what is going to end up ultimately happening is the public is going to watch this. The media is going to praise her for her courage. The public is going to go, well, that was a terrible show. Right. And the public is going to go, the polls will spike even more for Trump, even more so than they have in the last week. Do I think that's going to affect the election come November 5th? Probably not. I think that no matter what's going to happen on November 5th is going to happen as sure as it is today as it will be on November 5th. Mm-hmm. But I do find this entertaining, and I think this is going to be fun to watch. I hope there's a couple of boom moments and some gut laughs that Trump is known for. But I don't think that I think it's going to be pretty cringy for the most part. I think we're going to be kind of both sitting here going, oh, yeah, all of this is awful. All of this is awful, But
that's exactly where I'm at. Like, I have Kamala Harris's best defense against anybody right now in this debate is that she is not Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And she's going to use that because that's basically all she has as far as positive affect things that she's been able to accomplish in the last over 3 years.
Yeah, I would imagine that's where her coaching has led her.
Yep.
And then to try to bring up abortion as much as possible because
Yeah,
it's literally the only topic.
Don't talk with your hands, no cackling. Stick to the script and bring up women's right to choose as much as you possibly can. Tie everything back to racial stuff. Try to pick a racial or ethnic background and stick to it. Like that's pretty point and shoot stuff. As far as policy, which I really wish we could hear a lot more of. I don't think we're going to get any of that.
No.
Before shit got really crazy, I was like kibitzing with you on this very show about how I'm chafed that it's become more of a roast than it has a debate,
Right.
And we're on ABC, so they're going to cut microphones off on one side at least. As soon as that timer runs out.
She was complaining that the Biden rules that they set are actually going to handcuff her, and she was pretty upset about it. And so I'm kind of curious as to why she thinks that would be a benefit to her to not have the microphones muted. In any arena with Donald Trump, you don't want open microphones. You're going to get another. You're going to jail Hillary clippable moment over and over and over again. It serves her interest. Not that it's much better, because he's really good at on when his mic gets turned on with the hit comeback. But I don't understand why she thought it was going to damage her in any way to leave the mics muted. It doesn't make any sense.
I think with her everyone's plus positivity campaign stuff, she should just be enamored with what could be, unburdened by what has been, like
actually I just figured it out. Actually, what exactly it is so that she can have the gotcha moment when she goes, "Excuse me, I'm speaking."
Yeah. That's exactly what I expect. Yeah.
She wanted that, and she's not going to be able to get it if the mics are muted. And so that would have been her power play. And
this ABC,
what they were going for.
They're just going to cut him.
That's probably true.
That's what I expect. I expect this to be a very one-sided, lopsided thing, but we'll see. I don't have much faith.
The Empires were paid in this World Series for sure.
Yeah.
So we're looking at corrupted blue here. But
yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just not going to be a fair fight in any way. He's not going to get fair rules, and she's not in an arena with she's a lightweight in a heavyweight arena.
Yeah.
So it's just, we'll see how, I mean, it can get messy, but it could also go weirdly, calmly clean. I mean, that last debate was way calmer than I thought it was going to be, and more reserved. But we're closing down to, we're down to the wire. We're down to 55 days.
Yeah.
So the gloves are off. They have to be. There's no way around it. On both sides, they have to not pull any punches. This debate could possibly affect either of their campaigns. I obviously have my opinions as to how things go on November 5th, regardless of this, but in a generality speaking kind of situation, in a normal kind of political arena, this type of stuff is really what makes or breaks the race to November.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we are in a situation here where I don't think anybody's going to get swayed one way or the other. I think everybody's kind of very settled in their camps. There is a pretty, I don't know, do you think that there's a middle ground that is going to watch this and be persuaded one way or the other, that there's an independent vote that could be bought by this debate?
No, I think here's what I think. I think the polarization has gone so far that even when people don't talk about politics, they're already entrenched in their camp. They're just not going to ever say who they voted for, and we're just going to find out if they're voting with their wallets, if they were anti-Trump last time, but to a degree that was maybe not as radicalized as we come to expect. But no, I don't think there's a whole lot left of the American electorate that isn't already decided where they're going to go. And that's why I think this is going to be more of I think this is going to be more of a WWE WrestleMania type of thing. And it's just, most of what this is for media circus. In fact, the only reason we're doing this is because it's content. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't believe there's going to be anything that we're going to learn here other than, to your point, there's going to be some real cringe moments. So sit back, relax, everybody. It's going to be fun. We're about 8.5 minutes, a little less than that, away from debate.
Look at old tubby Chris Christie.
Oh, there he is.
There.
You want to hear him? You want to hear what he has to say?
I'm sure it's delightful.
Let's see what Chris has to say.
And wait for the time to come, and they make you get there early.
Yeah, it's bullshit as usual. So anyway, I'll turn him back on. A
little small talk
I don't care.
Nobody's trying to give him any kind of clues.
So I mean, things we got to watch out for. Gun confiscation stuff in the face of safety. Just turn in your civil liberties and your freedoms and be safe. It's an old playbook. The women's rights thing, which I think she's going to stick to. But there is not a single American happening in the last 3+ years that she could stand there with a straight face and call defensible, in my opinion. Across the board, shit's more expensive.
She's going to have to steer the ship against every question about what she's actually been doing for the last 3 years.
Yep.
She's going to have to steer it away from the economy. She's going to have to steer it away from the border. She's going to have to steer it away from so many topics. I don't think she has the bandwidth to do that.
That'll be the key to how he performs tonight.
I agree.
He's got the width to do some stuff. My God, look at that man.
Hillary Clinton.
Is it just my screen, or is that dude just like beat red, like his neck is being pinched off?
I think it's the rebroadcast, because he looks regular on the YouTube side, but he looks a little redder on the restream.
And I can tell you that in 2016, he would regularly say during the many
this guy just has a boner for Trump.
That Hillary Clinton was smart, that she was a good debater, that she was not to be taken lightly. And I don't think there was
Chris Christie, do you think she was a master at it? Would you call her a master debater?
A master debater?
2020. And clearly during the
Still a child here on the show. There at the Modern Relics, can't help myself. You know, and I had the perfect T-shirt for tonight, but I can't find it. I had a vote Beavis for Congress. It says nachos, chicks, beer, and that's all it says underneath it.
I have my zombie Biden shirt that says disobey.
I love it. I love it.
Ready for Hillary Clinton in his 2020 debate prep. He was completely unserious.
I almost put my tricorn hat on tonight, but I wasn't sure if my headphones wouldn't fit over it.
You'd have to switch to buds.
Yeah.
Martha?
And we have about 6 minutes left before the debate, so let's bring in Donna Brazil, formerly the DNC. And
Hi, Donna.
You keeping her around? Man, how nice. Very charitable of you guys to keep her around after all the trouble she's caused.
But she also has to own.
Not great to see you again, Donna.
It's
And
quite
she-
easy, because I do believe that in talking about the future, you draw from
She
your
is looking
past, you draw
like
from your past
an
experiences,
AI
and she
character.
draws
She
from
doesn't
how
look
she was
real.
raised, the values that was instilled in her young lady. Look, she is steady on her feet, still in her resolve, and tonight she's.
What is her resolve, Donna?
Well, yeah, do tell.
I'm sure she's steady in it. I want to know what it is.
Some ideas that I want to share with you. There's so much that we have done together over the last 4 years. But here's what I think we can do together over the next 4 years. Be positive in her approach and really remind the American people that we don't want to go back to the chaos and the confusion, the disaster that made, of course, the American people go out in droves in 2020 to fire the former president. I want to be a president that lead all Americans. I want to keep
That's
us
what happened. I
strong and
forgot.
secure. And here's
Yeah,
the plan,
thanks
that
for the
I wanna
reminder,
share.
Appreciate
Donna.
the
And Donna, I of course
the imagination with the
she
corrected
has to
history
own
there.
up to the
All
Biden
right.
administration's any mistakes they made too, and Donald Trump is going to go after her.
You know, Martha, they made mistakes. Donald Trump and Mr. Pence made mistakes. But you know what? If we focus on our mistakes, we won't focus on all of the good that we could do together as Americans.
What do you? We're gonna do it together. What exactly are we doing?
Where are we going together? Where's this?
Yeah.
This awesome bus.
Let's all get on the train, guys. Let's all get on the train.
From the visits that she's made to
Where are we
small
going?
towns across
I don't
this
know.
country, large cities across the country, bring us together. The American people want to be led into the future, not dragged back to another era.
And Ryan, so I want
Man, they
your
all got their
thoughts
talking
on-
points.
you've
The
also
unity
prepped,
talking points
Donald
are
Trump
on.
for
I'd be
Tuesday.
willing to
all-
argue
2016.
most of Americans
I believe
would like
what
to get drugged
Donald
back into
Trump
a
team
different
think
era.
we'll see tonight.
Yeah.
Can he be
Yeah.
disciplined about talking
I would
about
I mean,
love to go
subjective
back
on what
to
that era may
2000.
be, but you know,
I would love to go back into just plain and simply 2018 gas
Donald
prices.
Trump doesn't have a lot to lose tonight. I
W-
his
when was
support
life
has always
normal?
Been almost unmovable. So
2000.
faces the honeymoon, I think, is over.
Yeah,
Five?
2007.
Kamala Harris.
Se-
And you all kinda touched
2004?
on it with Donna.
Now let's go. Let's go
Kamala
pre
Harris has the
9/11.
answer for the state of the
2000.
economy that
Just-
she took
let's go
apart
back to that
with the
era.
Biden administration, the border.
We
the-
survived
her
Y2K.
past positions
We're
on
all excited to be alive.
the border,
We're still watching The
decriminalizing
Matrix and
certain
talking about
drugs,
it from last
what
year.
her role was in
Shit was
Afghanistan.
good.
Really, the
Yeah.
spotlight
We were
is on
cringing at the
Kamala
new
Harris
Star Wars
tonight because
movies,
she played a
but
role in the
outside
Biden
of that,
administration. She wants to act like she's not an incumbent.
we all learned about the
So
dark
this
side
is
of trade
where the focus is
negotiations and
going to
shit. But
be.
other than
And
that,
she's got a lot to answer for tonight, and I think
She's
that's
acting
where
like she's
Donald
not the
Trump's
incumbent?
focus will be and where it actually should be tonight.
she's not.
Well, one of the things
Oh.
he wants to do
She's an
is
installation.
have female
Yeah.
voters look at him. How does he attract female voters?
She's Grumpy
after
Cat,
saying
the
things
AI.
About Kamala Harris, and we'll see how
Wow.
he pronounces that tonight.
She really
Things
is.
he said about Kamala Harris, that she's dumb as a rock. That's not really going to attract female voters, is it?
Who cares?
Yeah, no, it won't. But I also think that just like he did in the first debate,
What's this
against
guy's
Joe
name?
Biden, I think
Renus?
the formula
Renus?
here is to constantly
Renus Priebus?
tie Kamala Harris to the
Mr.
Biden
Renus.
administration, which is where Trump
Renus
I do
Priebus.
declare
against her on the economy. and
your name
inflation
is
and all
silly.
these other problems that we're having.
He
And
would
then
wear a
sit
purple
back
tie,
and let her
Renus.
talk. Let her
What a
explain
Renus, dude.
herself, her past positions, current positions. How does she feel about how Biden has done on the economy? How does she feel about the border? Then turn it over and let her talk.
Okay, thanks so much for joining us tonight, Donna and Reince. We're all staying tuned. Can't wait.
Reince.
And I have
I'm not
say,
going to remember
as
that.
we are just a
We're gonna
couple
call you
less than 2
Renus.
minutes away. This such an extraordinary moment, especially Rachel, when you consider that these two people have been the center of our lives for the last 2 months.
Isn't that
never
the
met each
bad
other.
guy
Never even
from
met each
the
other. And Harris
TV
said,
show
"If you got something
Lost?
to say, say it to my face." The
I was wondering why
question
she
is,
was
does
creeping
Donald
up so
Trump
close
actually
to
go
him
there? He's questioned
on
her
that
racial
headshot.
identity, He's questioned her intelligence as well, or does he stick?
Dude, my lady was like this.
Look, this is the largest audience they're likely going to have in this race. It will be interesting to see if Harris can make clear the stark choice before voters, and where does she decide to land?
Welcome, Kootenai County spectators. Is it possible to turn up the debate volume? It is. It might blow out someone's ears, but we'll try.
Didn't back in 2016
little-
when I did that.
That
debate.
better?
We'll stand by to see that
That
tonight.
works for
but the
me.
first
Doesn't hurt
time,
my ears.
Side to side, together.
We're
And
almost
I
at
have my
the
doubts that
clipping
we're gonna see
point,
that
so
handshake, but what we are going to see is a spirited debate.
Let me
and
know if that's
perhaps
better.
The most consequential general election debate we have ever seen, because almost certainly.
So I think the
last one.
application volume's all the
So
way up.
with
Let's
the-
double check
the
that.
stakes so high,
It is,
The
yeah.
presidential debate just moments away. We have the entire news division keeping an eye on everything. We are going to be fact-checking on our live blog.
Fact-checking
It's all gonna be happening
live on the
here
blog.
at Debate now.
You guys have been so good at that for the last couple of years.
And we
Okay,
will
she
be
said, yes,
back
that's great.
with our
Thank you.
post-game
You're very
show
welcome.
as
Thank
soon
you
as
for
it's over.
joining
We're
us.
going to toss it right now to David Muir and Lindsay Day.
What should our bingo board, like
Tonight, the
unprecedented?
high-stakes showdown here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Their first
Jan
face-to-face
6.
meeting in this presidential election. Their first
Yeah,
face-to-face
definitely Jan
meeting
6.
ever.
I really want her to say what could be unburdened by what has been. I want it so bad.
Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania. all
Mom
still
said it could be
very
louder.
much in play.
We are at the
ABC
clipping
News
point, my
presidential
friends.
debate
I
starts right
apologize.
now.
I can give it a few more dBs, but it's going to be really loud. So
Consequential moment of this campaign, Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face, historic.
Historic.
The
This has
ABC
never
News
happened before.
presidential debate.
Two people talking about their plans for this country going into an election between the exact same two
Good
people.
evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC
Talk
News
to me,
presidential
David.
debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and
I feel
around the
welcome.
world tonight.
I feel
Vice
welcome,
President
too.
Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this
She's
unprecedented
not
race
very
for president.
welcoming.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could
That
be
tire's
the
a
most
little prickly.
consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2
she
months
looks fine.
away.
I'm just kidding.
For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his
first
debate
debate
against President
since
Donald
what?
Trump in June. Since then,
Her-
this race
when
has
she
taken
ran
on
for
an
president?
entirely
She was
new dynamic.
serving the
That
city of
brings us
San
to the rules of
Francisco,
tonight's
maybe?
debate. 90 minutes with two
Yeah, it is
commercial
actually
breaks, no
since
topics
I
or
believe you're correct.
questions
I think
shared with the campaign.
Since Tulsi
The
Gabbard
candidates
kicked
will
her
have 2
ass,
minutes
isn't
to answer
that like
questions.
I think
the
it's
last
either
debate
Tulsi
she's
or
ever had?
That's what they'll
or
be
the
seeing. 2
primaries,
minutes
yeah.
for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones
Okay,
will
here's
only
the
be turned
rules.
on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for two candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss.
They've
He
never
chose to
met?
deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
To no applause.
Yeah. This is eerie.
Kamala Harris.
Look at
Have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
what
Good
was
evening.
with that
We are
weird
looking forward to a
stride.
spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue
practiced.
that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country.
Well, go
Vice
figure.
President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time.
That's more than you guys gave
so
to
that
Hawaii.
Those young families can afford to buy a
I guess
crib,
she's got
buy
my
a
vote.
car
Generous.
seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone
With
of America's
money.
economy. My
Yeah,
opponent,
that's a
on the
good
other
question.
hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that
What
Trump
exactly
sales
did
tax would
her
actually
camp
result
spend in the
for
last 3
middle-class
years?
families
$7 trillion?
in about $4,000 more
Oh,
a
that-
year.
I mean, besides
because
on
of
the
his
Ukraine
policies
war,
and
sure.
his ideas.
I mean, that's in
about
addition
what
to.
should be the backs of middle
Just
class
checking.
people paying
Yeah.
for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class.
You can shake your head
On top of that,
all you
we
want,
have
but
millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that Xi and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy.
Remember when all of them said we won't take a shot if it's a Donald Trump shot?
And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess. What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you on this debate tonight, you're going to hear
You're at the helm. I got to go grab the door.
tired playbook.
Okay.
A bunch of lies, grievances, and name calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president
Project
intends on
2025,
implementing
guys. Mark
if he were
your
elected
bingo
again.
cards. There
I
it
believe
is.
very strongly that the American people
Which
want
he's already
a president who
denounced.
understands the importance
Says that
of
he had
bringing
nothing to
us
do with
together,
it.
knowing we have
Even
so
the
much more
owner-
in common than what separates us. And I
She
pledge
just
to
brought
you
up
to be a
Project
president for all
2025
Americans.
immediately.
President Trump will
And
give you
he's already
Number one, I have
he's
nothing
already
to do,
denied
as
he has
you know,
anything to
and
do
as
with
she knows better than anyone. I have nothing to do with Project 2025.
See?
That's
Yeah.
out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad.
Yeah.
But it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody
The
knows
guy who
what I'm
wrote
gonna
it
do.
has
Cut
been on
taxes
Tim Pool
very
twice now,
substantially
saying
and
exactly
create a
what
great
Trump is saying right
economy
now,
like I
that
did
he
before.
he did not
We had the
adopt it.
greatest
He has
economy.
not.
We got hit
He
with a
wants him
pandemic.
to.
Yeah, but that doesn't
And the
sell in
pandemic
media
was
spin, bro.
Not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy
Wouldn't
and
agree
where the stock
entirely with
market was
that. I
higher
think
than
that
it
you
was
buckled a
before
little
the
bit,
pandemic
but-
came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs, bounce back, and it bounced back, and it went to their
manufactured
benefit.
disaster.
But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I
Did she
describe
do
as an
no,
opportunity economy.
research or
and
homework
the best
before she
economists
came
in
here?
our country, if not the
No, but that's
world,
been the
have
Republican
reviewed our
counter narrative
relative
for
plans for the future
30
of
years.
America. What
Yeah.
Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan
The very Goldman
would make
Sachs
the
Obama
economy
bailed
worse.
out?
Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually
Want us to be
explode
clear here.
the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You
Well,
just
it
have to look
didn't
at
the
where
last
we
time
are
he
and
was
where we
president.
stand on the issues. And
We're
I'd
on the
invite you to know
verge of a recession
that Donald
today.
Trump actually has no
Yeah.
plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
Give her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a
This is a
country. It's
food
gonna
fight
make
now.
people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just,
Oh, no.
we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan.
spot,
She
run.
doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this, because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have, and who's going to have higher prices, is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because
Good correction, because virtually is the correct
People can't
word.
go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls
Calm
say
down,
80
Donald.
and 85 and even 90%
Starting to get
that
hot
the
under
Trump
the collar.
economy was great, that
He's
their
ramping
economy
up.
was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response to what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires,
Weren't we in
focusing
a
on
chip
relationships
shortage?
with our allies, focusing on
Yeah.
investing in
We
American-based
were.
technology.
Oh, okay.
Remember
so
when
that
I
we
thought
win the race on
American cars
AI
were
and
like
quantum
stacking up
computing,
unsellable
focusing
because
on what we need to
we
do
didn't have
to
chips from
support
overseas.
America's workforce.
It took
so
me
that
forever
we
to
don't
buy the
end up
computer
having
that I'm
on
looking
the
at
short end
because
of
there
the
was a
stick
chip shortage.
in terms of workers'
Like,
rights.
it's
But
Almost
what
ridiculous.
forgot.
Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi.
God, now she's
exclamation
boiling.
Point, when we
Yeah.
know that Xi was responsible for
I'm
lacking
pretty
and
sure
not
that
giving
Trump
us
spent
transparency
a
about the
year
origins
blaming
of COVID.
China
President Trump will
and
let you
saying
respond.
that
First of
she
all,
was
they bought their
responsible
chips
for it.
from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country,
I thought she was
and
raised
when
by
you
her
look at
mom and
these
some lady.
millions and millions of people that are pouring into our
Some
country
small
monthly,
business owner lady.
Yeah, some
where
small
it's,
business
I believe,
owner lady.
21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State.
I think she was
pouring
raised in Canada,
and just
wasn't
look
she?
at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals.
she was
Many of these
Dutch.
people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has,
No, but seriously, I think she was
our
actually
country
raised in
with
Canada.
policy that's insane. Almost policy that
No,
you
I know.
say they have to
Oh,
hate
okay.
our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's an execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years, they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now,
where
Ohio,
it belongs, by the way, out of the hands of the federal government.
Kansas,
it is not a constitutional thing.
It never was.
But
to the 10th Amendment.
Individual state
He's right.
is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
She just had to throw that little barb in there.
And that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans.
You think that was the master plan by the Republican Party back then?
For a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor
That's not
of
a Trump
crime
abortion
of
ban. That is a
violation
state
to their
that
body
the legislative
does not have the
body
right to make a
voted
decision
on.
about what happens to their body next. That is
That,
immoral.
Miss Harris, is what's known as the will of the people.
One does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held
Trump
beliefs
had nothing to do with that. He just popped it to where it belonged in the states, and then the states decided by elected representatives to do what they wanted with their abortion laws. And guess what? If you don't like it,
you want to talk
move.
about this is
Go
what
to a
people
different state.
wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking
even
lot.
close
She didn't want that.
to
Her
the
husband
situation.
didn't want that.
By the way,
A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term, they don't want that. And I
To be
pledge
fair,
to you,
if I'm
when
gauging
Congress
this,
passes
she's
a bill
actually not doing
to put
bad.
back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade,
I don't
as
agree with
President of the
anything she's
United
saying,
States, I will
but as far as
proudly
presentation,
sign it
as far as
into law.
speaking to
But
her
understand,
audience,
If
She's
Donald
actually
Trump were to be reelected,
doing way
he
better
will
than I
sign
thought
a
she
We'll
was.
see
national
when she
abortion
gets to
ban.
the
Understand, in his Project
border.
2025, there
Oh,
would
yeah,
be a
this is her-
national
this is her
abortion,
arena.
a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe
I love the
that certain
uninvited
freedoms,
stab there at
in
the end by the
particular,
ABC
freedom to make
correspondent.
decisions about
Oh, that's
one's
not
own
legal in
body
any state in America, by
should
the
not
way.
be made by the government.
Yeah.
Kamala?
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came
Well,
to
I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then
there you go.
her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost.
Get to your second point.
The millions
We're
and
not here
millions
for
of
student
people
loans.
that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get
Come
it
on,
for
buddy.
free. But they were saying it's the same
Rein
way
it back
that
in, buddy.
they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no,
That's
because
true.
your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years, they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs.
Isn't that what you sit next to on every airplane?
And what you are putting her through is unconscionable.
Fly all over for
And the
medical
people of
procedures.
America
What the hell
have
are you
not-
talking
the
about?
majority of Americans believe in a woman's
People
right to
fly
make
to
decisions
Canada,
about her own
Mexico,
body.
to
And that is
different
why
states for
in
every type of medical
state where
procedure.
this issue has
This is
been on the ballot
ridiculous.
in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been
What
a
they
leader.
should talk about is the
In fact,
cabal around adoption
when they got a very
right
negative
now.
decision on IVF from the Alabama courts.
Absolutely.
I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer
That's
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question. Would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month,
By
the 9th
putting
month,
it to the
and
states, he doesn't
probably
have to
after birth.
answer that
Just
question
look
because
at the
it's a
governor,
moot
former
point.
governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to
Here we go.
Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm reading right now, ABC News is lying. Tim Waltz
prosecuted transnational criminal
in
organizations
Minnesota repealed a
trafficking of
requirement to
guns,
provide life-saving
drugs,
care
and
to
human
infants
beings.
born
And let me
alive
say
after abortions.
that the United
He
States
also
Congress,
repealed
including
any
some of the most conservative
requirements
members
for
of the United
clinics
States Senate,
to even
came up with a
record
border
such
security
births.
bill,
The
which
left
I supported.
believes in legal
And that
infanticide.
bill would
The
have
laws
put
they pass
1,500
prove
more
it,
border agents
period.
on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl.
That you had 3 years to do something about, by the way, Miss Harris.
More resources to
Yeah,
allow us to
borders
prosecute
are-
transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened?
Which was
to that
your
bill?
job.
Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because
Oh, he did that from his
preferred
cell
to run
phone.
on a problem
Okay.
instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of
Well,
our
that's a
country
fun move.
actually need a leader who engages
Oh, he's
in
just going to run on a
solutions,
problem
who
that we
actually
perpetuated
addresses
for 3.5
the
years.
problems at hand.
Right.
But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised.
Problem
And I'm
we
going to actually
created.
do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's
You
rallies.
created it.
Because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about
Guess when you're
fictional
dodging
characters like
gunfire.
Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start
What?
leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you,
Oh, I
one
saw the
thing you
coverage
will
of the
not hear him
DNC.
talk
It looked
about
like no one
is
even
you.
showed up. So
You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your
To be
response.
fair,
Let me
like,
just
I
ask,
want to
though,
give
why did you
her a little
kill that
credit
bill,
here.
and
She's
successfully
far less
so, that would have put thousands of additional
word-salady
agents and
than I
officers on the board.
expected.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies.
Yeah.
She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go.
Oh, dude.
And the people that do go,
Let it
she's
go,
busing
man.
them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to
he took
take
the bait.
their country
He took
back.
the bait.
Our
Shouldn't have
country
taken the
is
bait.
being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened
She
3.5
has the
years
smug
ago.
look of somebody who
And
said, "I just threw you
what's
some
going
meat,"
on
and he
here, you're going
couldn't-
to end up in World War
couldn't
III,
walk away
just to
from
go
it.
into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United
All you gotta
States.
say,
And a lot
Trump,
of towns
is
don't want to
I
talk.
was
Not going to be
I was the
Aurora or
border wall
Springfield.
guy.
A lot of towns don't want to talk about
I was
it
trying
because
to
they're
keep
so
I was
embarrassed
trying
by
to
it.
put up a whole
In
damn wall.
Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
And it's
this
true.
is what's
That's
happening
actually
in our
true.
country. And it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
The people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
Yeah, we'll find out.
You talk about extreme.
That was cringy.
This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement
she's gotten into cackle mode.
of
Here we go.
200 Republicans who have formally worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know,
these aren't people part of the war machine, are they?
The former president
that is not somebody I would raise the flag about, lady.
Yeah.
The Cheney family.
Oh, Halliburton Cheney?
A four-star general has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric,
I was doing a hell of a lot better under a red president
are not being addressed
in nearly every metric.
So, in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written
Every
about
single
you.
one of their
But
predictors,
just to
everybody
finish,
that was
I
in
got
charge
more
of any
votes
department
than
head,
any Republican
all of
in
them
history
were
by far.
drastically wrong with
In fact,
whenever the
I got
reports
more
came
votes
out. They
than
were
any
always
president,
wrong.
sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police.
With
how
local
would you
police.
deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. You know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down. You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done
we've talked
like
about
this
that
at
a
all.
lot.
They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof, and we have a new form of crime.
In
It's called
every
migrant
metropolitan
crime,
area,
and it's happening
and
at levels
even the
that
smaller
nobody thought
cities are starting to
possible.
see
Trump,
it.
as you know, the FBI says overall
increasing.
violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse
President
me, the
He's
FBI
not debating
They were
her.
defrauding statements.
He's
They didn't include the worst cities.
He's debating the
they didn't
moderators.
include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud.
I mean, I
Just
called
like
that
their
at the
number of
beginning.
818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American
That's
people
if
are
inflation even allows anyone to buy a
same
house.
old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
Standing up and saying that it was
A really quick
weaponization.
response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme. And
Pithy quip from the
context in
ABC
which
booth
this
about
election in
there's no
2024
such
is
thing
taking
as
place.
weaponization
The
in all
United
50 states.
Supreme Court
Ms. Harris?
recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald
saying
Trump were
it
back
out
in
of
the White
context
House
and
with
actually
no
doing it without
guardrails.
saying it at
Because
all.
certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice
to
President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They talk about democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy with a fake Russia investigation
We do have a lot to
that
get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for
Because she
assault
wants to
weapons. Now your
win
campaign
the
says
White
you don't.
House.
You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point.
Because I want to win, that's
but in
why.
particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking
don't have
vote
the
on the
authority to
Inflation
ban
Reduction
fracking.
Because you
Act,
can't.
which opened
Yeah.
new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase
pipelines that you guys shut down
Yeah,
on day one?
we wouldn't need to worry about foreign oil if you didn't kill every fucking pipeline in the United States.
On foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved
and a small business lady.
and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values
Things
I bring
nobody else can
to the
do at all
importance of home
right now
ownership,
because
knowing
of your
not everybody
inflation.
got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime
Did you have a plan for that?
That is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting
she's
seniors
gone into
from
word
scams.
salad mode.
My values
None of this
have not
has anything
changed.
to do with what
and
the
what is
question
important
was.
is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down.
I don't know. I felt pretty
And
lifted up
name-calling.
between
The true measure of
2016
the
and 2020.
is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up.
That was the same period of time I did not lose
President Trump,
a quarter of my retirement, by the way.
$400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised.
Many billions.
So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now. If you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
Oh!
She went out.
There it is. That's what I was waiting for.
Oh!
In Minnesota. And
Look at how upset she looks right now, Chad.
Dude, she is. Oh, dude.
She went out and raised money to get him out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of.
That sounds
now she wants to
Dude,
do
he got to it before she did. He just swept her legs out from underneath her. That was great.
Oh, that was the most Cobra Kai shit I've ever
She
seen.
wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish one thing, so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country and oil will be dead. Fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills and we'll go back to solar where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that she
We're out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol.
Yeah, I said they would
be right there with them.
Call this out, too.
The country and the world saw what played out at the
January
Capitol that
6th.
day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that.
Say it.
She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America, they're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
It's actually only like 4 blocks.
You might ask her that question.
You were
it was a police precinct.
You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward.
It was almost 5 blocks.
Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
In a police
I
precinct.
had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C.
Good for you.
And the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers.
This is true.
They rejected
Yes.
me. Nancy
This is
Pelosi
true.
rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was
she was
vice
there.
president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob
Oh my God.
to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died.
It wasn't an insurrection. If you get to go back to work
president has
2 hours later,
and impeached
that is not
for
an
exactly
insurrection.
that reason.
And the PBS coverage from that day that I watched, people were milling about, going, yeah, whatever.
Where there was a mob of people carrying
There
tiki
wasn't
torches,
any firearms. There was no
spewing
weapons.
anti-Semitic hate.
Oh God.
And what did
where are the tapes?
president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
Oh,
Let's
that has
remember
already been debunked
that
over and over
when it came
again.
to the Proud Boys, a militia.
Oh, here we go.
The president
Dude,
said,
she
the
is
former
like
president said, stand back and
They're like
stand
pulling
by.
all the old hits.
So for
Yeah.
everyone
From-
watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time
Although
to
I
turn
know the
page.
exact gentleman,
And
and
if
I
that
use that
was a
term
bridge too
lightly,
far for you,
who
well,
was
there is a
actually
place
in
our
it was
campaign
his
for you
idea
to
at the Unite the
stand
Right rally
for
to
country,
do the Tiki
to
Torch March
stand
and
for our
say the Jews
democracy,
will
to
not replace
stand
us.
for rule
I
of
personally
law,
know that guy
and
because
to
he
end the
lives in my
chaos,
town.
and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course.
I wish we could go
for
back
the
accurately,
future
Miss Harris.
and not go
Yeah.
backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
Was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border. How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You'll say, come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
Artisan framing.
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they
there was
said
no
we didn't have standing.
Fraud.
That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania.
And Nevada.
We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have
That's
put
what
it
he should
into
have started
decline.
with.
We have a nation that is dying, David.
Absolutely.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom work with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart, Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him.
Every single outlet is now reporting
North
that
Korea
this
was
isn't
afraid
Trump
of him.
versus Kamala.
Look at
It's
what's going
3
on
on
with North
1.
Korea, by the way. He said Russia
Moderator
was
tries
afraid
to
of
fact
him. I ended
Trump,
the
and
Nord
it
Stream 2
instantly blows up in
pipeline,
his face. This
and
isn't
Biden
Trump
put
versus
it back
Kamala.
on day one,
This is
but
Trump
he ended
versus
the
ABC.
XL pipeline. The
Oh yeah,
XL pipeline
I mean, I
in
led our
country. He
podcast with
ended
that.
But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president. But when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office.
Interesting
And you know
angle.
what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They
Yikes.
threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I
up.
think we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans
Gonna
among
get
them.
crazy.
Vice
Here
President
it is.
Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist
As long as we're
organization,
unburdened by what has been. Yeah.
slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were
This is going to be a
raped.
weird.
And so, absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because
she
it is
just
also
stepped
true,
in
far
her
too many
bases
innocent Palestinians have
shit
been
pile.
killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that
Kamala, you
this
need to
war
abort.
must end. It must end immediately.
Ceasefire.
And the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that.
Ruh-roh.
Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal
Cue
measure for the Palestinians.
free Palestine riots
But the one thing I
tomorrow.
will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza,
man.
where the Palestinians have
Iran is
security,
gonna be pissed at
self-determination,
her.
and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President
expect it
Trump,
from
how would
him.
you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she
That's
was
true.
at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong
I would
about that
agree with
one.
him on that.
She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli
that
people.
so?
He knows that. He's
Really?
trying to, again, divide
Let's rewind.
and
Let's rewind the
distract
tapes.
from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators.
Who's the president who
wants to
walked
be a
into North
dictator on
Korea
day
for the
one,
first time?
according to
Who's
himself.
the one that
It
created
is
the
well
Abraham
known
Accords?
that he
Like,
said of
there was
Putin
0 wars
that
in the
he
time frame
can
of his.
do whatever the hell he wants
like
and go
0
into
wars.
Ukraine.
I know
It
Tim
is
Pool is
well known
screaming
that
out of
he
the
said
screen
when
right now. I
Russia
bet you
went
anything.
into Ukraine, it was
That's
brilliant.
kind of his biggest thing.
It is well known
Yeah.
he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Love letters with
And
Kim
she's the one
Jong-un. Could we
that caused it.
call up some
That's
love
weak
letters to
on
Willie
national
Brown?
security by allowing every
Yeah.
nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people
This
into
would be
our
a
country.
fascinating
Their
read.
crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are.
That is
they're
true.
grossly incompetent.
Everything kicked
And I
off the
just
minute
ask one
that
question.
presidency
Why
switched
does Biden
hands?
go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic
God.
ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution
Oh,
Center
first
right
commercial
here
break?
in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Wow.
Can we switch out the moderators in the commercial break? This is ridiculous.
We cannot. However, I still don't think she's doing great. The problem is that she's doing great when nobody's checking facts.
Yeah,
That's-
and that's the problem.
That's the
She's
hard
not-
part is no one's checking the facts.
But as far as like her performances, I'm seeing that she's not going into nonsense word salads as much as I thought she would be. She is hitting on all of the talking points that her base likes to hear.
Yeah.
I think she fumbled a little bit with the Israeli Gaza thing, just because there was no win for her in that. So she just kind of bumbled through it. But as far as her performance goes, it's, although all lies that aren't being fact checked, at least performance wise, I feel like she's way stronger than I thought she would be.
Yep. She got coached up pretty well.
Yep.
I
So,
don't like seeing Trump fly off the handle about a bunch of different shit, but when he's calling up like, hey man, this was said under this context, or hey dude, this is not, that was debunked and you guys know it, like no one's dwelling on any of that. They're just like, well, so far no animals have been eaten according to the city guy that we called. So anyway, back to you. You know, like that type of stuff is things that I definitely expected. But yeah, she hasn't articulated a single point, not one, on what it is exactly that she would do.
Right.
And that's kind of why I like these, is on the hope that they're actually going to unfurl something that we could sink our teeth into and explore.
But you and I are looking for that kind of stuff. Her base isn't. They're looking at this because I'm kind of scoping through like social media.
Oh yeah, I've been on and off my phone the whole time.
And man, her harpies are like, she's doing fantastic, and they don't care about the issues. They care about one issue, which is abortion, and they care about not being Donald Trump. And for her to get like slam moments on him where she gets to like smirk at him and stuff, that's what they're eating up. They think that she's doing well because of that, and the fact that she's getting like double assisted by the moderators, so it is without a doubt
the one thing that the moderators
doesn't matter to them.
Exactly right. I think the one thing the moderators pointed out with no inflection is why 6 months before the election, the election, are you changing course? Like, why are we tightening things down and actually taking a harder stance on shit that you've had 3.5 years to not give a shit about?
And they didn't press her on it.
My view,
when she didn't answer it.
Yeah, she didn't answer it. I don't think either of them have answered a question yet.
Really?
Yeah. I think the point that a lot of people are going to draw conclusions to way too late is that all of the undocumented folks are going to skew the Electoral College, and it will absolutely skew the number, at least in the initial bite, of the popular vote. 100%.
Yep. Yeah.
So
absolutely,
those are massive issues, because those are denoted, the seat holders and appointed electable officials per state are denoted by the census. And that should scare some folks. So when the census just gets out of control, that's where you get more seats. Yeah. And that's what changes the Electoral College process in a massive way, which I think we covered a little bit on the pod before, but folks can just call that up whenever for net new censuses. It's all independent to the states and when they decide they want to do it. Chat, how are you guys feeling?
Yeah.
You guys hanging in there?
Do you think that she got coached by Obama himself tonight?
Probably. I think he's one of her biggest fans. So
yeah. Well, yeah. Because she'll do what he wants.
Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years
they need to keep
into
the
this conflict.
Camera
Mr. President,
on that,
it has been the position of the Biden
moderator lady. They need
that
to
we
keep
must
it
defend Ukraine
forward.
from Russia, from Vladimir
her
Putin,
profile,
to defend their
her
sovereignty,
forehead
their
is like
democracy,
3 foreheads.
that it's in America's best interest to do so.
She can
arguing that if
remember
Putin
what's about to
wins,
happen tomorrow.
He may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look,
Kamala baited Trump by making fun of his rallies. Trump took the bait,
because they
got
don't
angry,
ask
and
Europe,
started rambling. First misstep by Trump in this
to
debate.
getting this thing done.
I agree with Matt Walsh on that.
They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe, like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left. I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country.
That every single American right now
would be sitting in
is
Kyiv
like,
right
stop, please, we can't afford this. Stop giving them money.
Agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch?
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan.
You're using our money.
I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier. Yeah. Now, please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now.
Yikes.
But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin.
That was a
and she
great
did.
way to turn
and
that
the war
around,
started
though.
3
to
days
say,
later.
oh,
And
you were
that's
the one who
kind of
tried to stop the
talent we
war,
have
and
with
then it
her.
happened
She's
3
worse
days
than
later.
Biden.
Good
In my
on you.
opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something.
I don't know,
She is
Dick
a
Cheney's up there,
horrible
too.
negotiator.
I mean, she
They
polled
sent her
less,
in
and
to
Cheney shot a
negotiate
guy in the
as soon as
face.
They left.
That's
Putin
true.
Did the
That's true.
invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times.
Over 5?
The reality is it has
Like
been
6 or
about standing
10?
as America always should.
11-teen?
As a leader upholding international rules and norms.
Good
as
number.
a leader who
Yeah.
shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our
I mean, do
principles
we need
and not
NATO
sell
anymore?
them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before.
I
if
forgot
you
about
don't
that
pay,
when he stood
we're
in
not
front of
gonna
NATO
protect
and
you.
made them
Otherwise, we wouldn't
pay.
have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents
See,
said
this
they
is
would,
the
and
line
Joe
I
Biden
knew
did.
she would ride.
And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless
Oh, we're
war.
paying for Ukraine.
And as of today,
Yeah.
there is not one
And
member
Iran
of the
now.
United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald
Let's
Trump, when
see
he was
how-
president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and
Oh,
the
we'll get
president
it.
at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members
Am I
of our
wrong, or
military,
was everything
fallen
cruising
soldiers,
just fine, and he
the
was
work that
going
we
to be
must do
pulling
to
them out?
uphold the strength.
The order
Because
came
the
to
deal
pull
was-
out from
of the
President
United
Trump.
States of America
How
around
that
the
how
world.
that was
Vice President
executed
Harris,
was
thank you.
not
President Trump,
under
your
the Trump
response to her
administration.
saying that you began the
Yeah,
negotiations
thank
with
you.
the Taliban.
So
Because local
if you take a look at that period of time,
colonels and stuff were like,
the
no,
Taliban
we're not
was
going to do
killing
this.
our soldiers,
Like Sean
a lot of them,
Ryan
with
covered
snipers.
this, and recently.
Yeah.
And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18
Chat says,
months,
sounds like a whole lot of hoopla to me.
We
Lot
did
of
have
nothing.
an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo.
Yep.
It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst.
I want to move on.
And in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way,
This is going
that's why
poorly for her.
Russia
I need to move this
Ukraine,
along.
because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president
Is it tragic?
who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people.
Where?
I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual
who
took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution
Why isn't she being fact-checked on any of this?
Black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park Five, took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this.
It is tragic how stupid all of Kamala's words are.
As I do, I travel our country.
Yeah.
We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please
I don't think your DEI-backed identity politics-driven ideology that creeps its way into academia and modern American business would agree with what you're saying. But hey, you know, you're just endorsing them. What are we going to do?
President who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your third time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy
Bigger,
is.
better,
Their
and
oil
stronger.
policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad.
It's
And she can't
smart
get away
for him
with
to
that.
try to tie her, keep tying her back to being
Briefly.
Biden. She is that.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings
That none
a
of
sense
your own party
optimism
even wanted you.
about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe
We're going to play on the youth and the new movement of politics and be happy and go lucky.
That's a plan. Let's talk about our plans and
let's
let's
divert that
compare
way.
the plans.
I like the strategy.
I have a plan
It's a bit late.
to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan
That
is
might get
about
some diapers with your
allowing people
inflation.
to be able to pursue
Maybe.
what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to defund the police. She has a plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
you,
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump-
no, the
President
former
Trump-
president
That is
has said
correct,
something
Chad.
twice that I need to respond to.
I'm sorry, we're
I
going
just
to
need to
move
Chatter
on.
says
one
that
time
tax
to what
deduction is
President
just going to
Trump-
multiply
This is now your
taxes in other
third time
places.
running
That's
for president.
ridiculous.
You have long vowed to
And I
repeal
happen to
and
know that
replace
that
the
chatter
Affordable Care
is
Act,
only
also known as Obamacare.
15
You have
years
failed
old,
to accomplish
so
that. You now say you're going to keep
that chatter
Obamacare,
seems to
quote,
understand
unless we
things
can do
more
something
than
much
the
better.
person running
Last
for the
month, you
president
said,
of the
quote,
United
we're working
States.
on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private healthcare options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald
we're not
Trump
taking
was
them away.
president,
We're just offering a
60
buyback.
times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people
That's what HR 3200 did to my family, by the way, which became
when an
Obamacare.
insurance company could deny if a child had asthma,
that sounds like a
if someone was
ball-faced
a breast
lie to
cancer
me.
survivor, if a grandparent had
Pretty sure my mom died waiting for a liver transplant
as I've been vice president, and we
in
over
Washington
the last
State.
4 years have strengthened
I think
the
I got those
Affordable Care
facts
Act.
right.
We have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month.
One of the problems is she's kind of dragging him into areas that he didn't expect to have to, like he wasn't prepped for.
We will do
like
that
they
for all
thought they were
people,
going to attack on certain things.
that the value I bring to
And
this
it sounds like she had
access to
the
health
list of
care
questions
should be
first,
a
and he
right,
didn't.
and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be
she seemed
to
prepped for
strengthen the
every
Affordable
one of
Care Act,
these, and
not
he
get rid of it,
did not seem
fast
prepped for some of these questions.
in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
She made a mistake. At number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve
Much less money.
Private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means
Obama
in
and
terms of
all of your
losing their
cronies
home,
buying coastal
having nowhere
properties.
to go.
Right.
We
and
know
we,
that we can
we're getting
actually
denied
deal with
because
this issue. The young
they
people of
can't
America
afford to
care
carry the
deeply about
premiums.
this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs.
Because your EV ran out and the station, you were trying to film a thing and it didn't work out.
Of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of
I love that most
building
of
a
her
clean energy
stuff that has come out has been with paid
investing
actors.
in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening
And
up
by the
auto
way,
plants, not
this
closing
segment is
them
for
like
the youth.
happened under Donald
Nobody
Trump.
fucking drives. The youth don't give a fuck about American automotive jobs, by the way.
manufacturing jobs this last month. it's going. They're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
I got to say, tonight's been so historic.
I'm feeling historical. I'm feeling hysterically historical.
Let's catch up on chat. Isn't she the one who kept talking about stopping fracking, therefore jacking up gas prices? That is factually correct.
Yeah,
for years and years, she's been against that up until quite recently, as in tonight, defending the fact that, nope, not here in Pennsylvania will I say that.
Right. But, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, first day, at least within the first 2 or 3 days of the administration that she's a part of, by decree, by presidential decree, they shut down the pipelines. All of the pipelines within the United States got shut down within a week.
Yep.
And so why would she be friendly with fracking, which is something that the Democratic Party has been vehemently against for the better part of 20 years? Why is she friendly with them?
Deals that include foreign oil distributors, by the way.
Yeah.
Negating literally the facts. Historical facts up to this point negate literally her entire rebuttal on that point.
They have not fact checked her one time. She's never been in this whole debate, which is actually looks good for Trump, because the fact that they keep fact checking him and improperly, but they are also not even attempting to fact check her. And so it's the bias is so screamingly obvious that there's no way around it. So this is wild.
They could have had Joy Behar on as and Whoopi as the moderator at this point.
Yeah. This has been a fascinating go of things. I don't know if this is how I expected it to go. I mean, kind of. She's lying as much as I thought she would. Yep. She's just procedurally doing better than I thought she would. I thought she'd
procedurally she's pretty well put together, was coached up pretty well. The lies are outrageous, but she's trying to play all the hits and pulling shit up from like 20, 30 years ago and stuff too.
Yeah.
I like that the moderators are asking him how, and twice, how are you going to do it? And let's get back to your plan. When she says she has a plan, they just, I guess we'll just take your word for it. Cool. Yeah. That's the part that's like, why aren't you harping on the how? I think at least I'm maybe the minority here, but I'm the one that would love to understand that rather than the food fight we're seeing. But I've come to expect this is American politics. So
I'm overall kind of disappointed so far. We haven't heard anything of substance. You're gonna, we're gonna, there hasn't been anything where they've spelled out, Trump has not spelled out a single thing that he's actually going to do. He go, when I get there, I'll do it.
I think the biggest point he lost out of all of this is the healthcare plan. So you're saying you don't have one?
Yeah.
He should have just said, yeah, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because I'm not the president.
Yeah, I would have said, yeah, I'm not going to tell you what it is because she'll steal it.
Right. That would be bad strategy if a presidential hopeful outlines even an overview of a plan or the players involved when he's not the sitting president. So, yeah. I think I think he should. What they're going to run on is he has no plan. He even admitted it.
Yeah, and I think that she has made him. He's far more emotional than he was with the Biden debate, and I think they scored a slam dunk with her attacking his rallies and him reacting to it. He has gone off the rails after that. Ever since that point where he's like, no, my rallies are awesome. And then like from there, it has been a real kind of,
because it just seems like cheap shots. Like you're paying people to be at yours, like that kind of shit.
Here again.
Yeah.
David Muir.
All right, here we
and
go.
Lindsay Davis.
Closing statements.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing
So she gets
statements,
the
and
first
Vice
one,
President
he gets
Harris,
the second
we begin
one.
with you.
And his isn't going to be well rehearsed
So I think
at all.
you've
It's going to be
heard
rambling.
tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward.
We don't, though.
And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people,
Which we've heard
is why
none of.
I intend to create
None.
an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career
But by taking that back over, you are the government telling her what to do.
United States Senator and now Vice President. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things.
This isn't a closing statement.
Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do
what are you going to do?
Things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center. I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC.
Wow.
Okay, final thoughts. What do you think?
Who
do you think won?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get rid of this. There we go. It feels comfortable. We're back in our regular cave. Popular opinion, not on the quality of words. I think Kamala Harris won the debate.
I would agree.
Yep,
I would agree. I think that she was more controlled. I think that she steered the ship the entire time. I don't think that she hit any of her normal. Like, she hit a couple of her little quirky eccentricities, but she wasn't cackling the whole time. She didn't go into word salad at all.
A little bit.
A little bit, but like not in her normal fashion. And I think she was well coached, and I think she did a good job of steering him away from current topics. And baiting him and dragging him along, and I think he was too emotional. I think
for presentation and misdirection, she probably won the debate. For quality of content, I think both of them really didn't do too well. But for truth, I think Donald Trump was pretty much spot on.
Yeah,
I mean, at every turn,
I would agree,
including the wait, I have to go back to that. That was a lie, and here's why. I think it's in the zingers department, though. Absolutely, Donald Trump won that one.
For sure.
I don't have a scorecard to check boxes on, which we probably should have thought of. Come up with some creative scorecard questions, but ultimately, it goes back to what you said at the beginning of the pod. I don't think this is going to change the outcome of fence riding voters, because I don't believe, and I mean this, I don't believe there are any left.
Yeah.
I don't. I think there's going to be a quiet amount of people that just won't say who they vote for, and they're going to cast a vote in whatever direction they cast it. But I don't think there's a whole lot of battleground states to win over based on some policy we're all hanging breathlessly on. We know what's going on economically. We know how expensive stuff is and where things have gone in the last 3 years. We understand how much money we've spent. We don't really understand. We think we understand how much money is being spent on the Ukraine thing. We understand that there is absolutely zero plan in the Israel-Hamas piece from the Democratic left, period. And she wasn't even able to articulate that.
Other than escalating it with Iran.
Yep.
That's the only thing that seems to be on the horizon for that.
And one of the points you made weeks ago that I've been dwelling on since you said it was the fact that, if Kamala Harris gets into the White House, it is likely going to spurn into some other war. And I think she backed up what you said tacitly by suggesting all of these people, including the Cheney family and all these folks that are, behind her, so to speak. This is the military industrial complex from a private sector. 100%.
Between Romney, the Cheneys, the one that died that they were talking about. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, every single person that she brought up were all that warmonger class.
Yep.
That she's
Every piece of subcontracted logistics reported back to Halliburton through most of the Afghan war, and the Cheney family are Halliburton. all of that stuff, so the puzzle pieces you left that I'm now able to snap together that I've been studying for quite a while, she kind of reinforced a little bit. And I think that should scare some people too. And the reason it should scare some people is twofold. On the one hand, there's a lot of worldwide distrust in America for pulling out of Afghanistan the way that we did, because we let that become an epicenter of terrorism once again. And we left behind a whole bunch of, military equipment. There were lives lost. It was pretty disastrous. And the other thing that's behind that is, what if Trump is right? What if it's not a talking point and the escalation either from the Russia side or Israel Hamas starts to spin completely out of control, where military action is not just suggested on the NATO side or on the humanitarian law side of things, but is in fact a requirement for America to step back into a situation that will be infinitely worse to try and get their policymakers to mediate their way out of. And I think that's a terrifying threat that wasn't really discussed. It was kind of, we lobbed a few Hail Marys at it from the Trump side of things, but that bothers me. And I think there's a very real possibility there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Do you happen to have the Gen Z Bible near you?
I might. Let me take a look.
Oh. I think we should definitely do a
end on a high note. Maybe sing a song.
I didn't watch anything, by the way. I've been too busy to watch anything to review. So, it was perfect timing for this debate. But yeah, just a palate cleanser.
Yeah, let's do it. You guys ready for this?
I feel dirty.
I kind of do too. I don't like this format. I definitely don't like the hosts, but I don't like the format of American politics in 2024. I just don't. We don't learn anything. It's a big food fight, and everything's a Twitter or a TikTok reel, a zinger of look what you said out of context. So that's the world we live in. So we're at Friends chapter 22. This is titled Good Samaritan.
Ah, yes.
Gospel by Gen Z. Here we go. One time, a scholar put Jesus to the test, saying, "King, how do I enter the bussin' kingdom?" Jesus asked, "What does the divine dad lore say? How do you negotiate with the text?" He responded, "Simp for God with your whole self and be a real one to your neighbor." Jesus said, "Facts. Do this and you'll pass God's vibe check." But not wanting to take the L, the professor said, "Now what does a neighbor mean in the original Hebrew?" Jesus replied, "Listen, a bro was on a road trip when out of nowhere he caught some hands. The ops took all his bread, yeeted them halfway to Hades and skirted off. Now, a kindness content creator was walking down that way, but he was off the clock, so he just crossed the street. And then suddenly a wild televangelizer appeared, but he had to catch his ride, so he passed him by also. Finally, a cringe op pulled up and understood the assignment, so he brought him to the hospital and paid his whole bill. Which of these three was the real one to the bro?" He answered, "The op who switched up so fast." And Jesus said, "Bruv, spitting straight facts. Now go and manifest this also." That's it. That's the Good Samaritan according to Gen Z.
Love it.
It's damn good time.
Yeah.
So, bro, in closing, I knew I wouldn't be really wowed by any of this. I wasn't going to be super, oh my God, excited. I knew I wouldn't learn anything. And that's why.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a little.
I have learned nothing about Kamala Harris's policies and what she plans to do with the country other than absolute destruction.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned nothing of Trump's policies, even though I trust that that guy could wing it better than she could plan it ever.
I agree.
But I was very, not that I was expecting anything, but I also was I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get any. I mean, is this our last debate? Do we get two more?
I think this is it.
All right. Well, that was lackluster, and
it was lackluster. One thing that I do take a little bit of hope and joy in, and this was covered in some other podcasts, so I encourage you to listen to where Donald Trump has made some rounds recently in long form. You know, the points he made about, I had some staffers I fired because they were shit at their jobs.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was not a career politician before he became the president of the United States of America.
True. Yep.
I mean, he went from, New York real estate mogul to the gaming business to the reality television boss guy in the you fired, all that shit.
He went in blind with bad advisors. Like anybody else who came up through the ranks in politics and went up from being a state legislator into a state or into a U.S. senator into, climbing the ladder. They know all the players. They know all the lobbyists.
Yep.
They know all of the advisors. They know everybody. He knew none of them going into that.
By that point, she should have decades of experience on how to handle a debate by spitting facts and articulating points and not lying to the American people by trying to plead to the hearts and minds and emotions of all the people about how we need to turn the page, which we heard 5 or 6 times. So for a guy that is probably a little bit more well-versed in going into term 2, if that's the outcome of things, I think I'm a little more impressed with the straightforwardness of that sucks, knock it off, rather than the spinning word salad of somebody who's spent their entire life in modern American politics.
Agreed.
So at the end of the day, I knew I wasn't going to learn anything from any of this, but nothing that I heard in that debate has really made me cringe so hard that I would think twice.
Right.
And I really think that people should, if you took notes watching the debate or you had a good time watching us watch the debate, which I hope you did, do a little research on how these things were voted on and what actually turned out. And then what the immediate responses were, particularly the kickoff point for Russia's invasion of Ukraine, what happened just before, during, and immediately after the Afghanistan pullout, and what Kamala Harris and team, including Joe Biden, has said about Israel and Hamas.
Agreed. I think all of those things.
Don't take our word for it. Go look it up yourself. Like really
look
dig
into these things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, I had a good time. That was a super fun 2 hours hanging out. It went by quicker than I thought it was going to. I appreciate everybody being here. You can check us out anywhere you get a podcast. You can come on back and watch us on YouTube if you want to. Thank you for hanging out. I appreciate everyone lurking in chat.
And check us out and follow us on our socials. We've got Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all of that. So come add us, friend us.
We got
chat with us.
We got all the stuff.
Send us topics that you might want to hear about too.
Yeah, and also in the month of October, I think we're going to have another guest too, which is exciting if I can pull this off. So more to come on that front. Hopefully, we can line some stuff out as we burn our way through the fall and into the winter time where things are a little bit calmer. So I appreciate you guys. I think that's it for me, man.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.